So today's class, I want to continue the theme of being able to get up and down from the floor, getting up and down from, working in the garden, getting up and down from playing with children, I think about the human body in 21st century, and we are so accustomed to sitting that our spine has possibly become a little less flexible. And so today's brought to you by the spine. We'll do a lot of spinal movement, and feel free to sit out anything that doesn't feel right to you, because my plan is to actually do some things that may point out to you places of like tightness, and to sort of push through that tightness won't serve. But like I said, I'm going to try to put this up on YouTube so that you can revisit the ideas that I'm going to offer today, so that if something isn't feeling quite right, you can try it later. And I don't know how long Penny is going to sit here with me, but we'll see. She seems pretty happy. So I'll talk from here for now. Come to lying on your back with knees bent. So you're on your back, knees are bent. And in this shape, often this shape is really pretty comfortable for the spine. And so take a moment now to feel into, so to sort of take an inventory of your spine from the base of your skull through the neck, through the upper back, the middle of your back, and the low back, the tailbone. And notice along the way where the spine is actually curved toward the floor and where the spine is curved away from the floor. And so this is unique to all of us, this curvature, but the spine develops over time in early life. It develops curves. So the first curve that develops is the curve in the neck. So you might be feeling that the neck curves away from the floor. So the base of the skull, then the spine curves away from the floor, and then there's a pretty prominent vertebra at the top of the thoracic spine. And then the thoracic spine curves toward the floor. So likely that whole big chunk of spine is between your shoulder blades is connected to the floor. And then below the thoracic spine, it starts to curve away as the lumbar spine, the curve of the lumbar spine comes in. And this is where this part of the spine, the lumbar, is where as sitters, as people, humans, as bodies that sit, this is the spine that starts to get compromised, because sitting it takes that part of the spine out of its natural curve for standing, that supports standing. And then at the lower part of the lumbar curve are the hips. And feel into the hips. Are the hips equally resting against the floor? Is one hip, are you leaning into one more than the other? Just notice there's no right or wrong here. We're just really exploring and feeling the body. So I feel like the internet connection this morning is very slow. So just acknowledging that. So taking your attention into the hips now. So focusing mainly on the pelvis, the hips, the lumbar part of the spine. And can you feel how the spine possibly curves away from the floor in that low back region? And if so, can you make that part of your spine reverse its curve so that it's sort of curved toward the floor, so that maybe the spine, the lower lumbar spine, actually touches the floor? And this is where I want you to be very careful and gentle. And then take the spine back to its natural curve. So allow the lower back to curve away from the floor again. And then move back and forth through this, if it's comfortable, move back and forth, allowing the lumbar spine to arch or to curve toward the floor, and then to come back out, curving away from the floor. So moving back and forth through the curve of your low back, and be very gentle. And I want to explain what's happening here. The hips are actually moving. So if you picture your pelvis, your hips, as the rim of a bowl. So this is if that bowl is on its side and the bowl is tilting forward and the bowl is tilting backward. So that's the action. It comes from the hips, the lowering of the pelvis and the lifting of the pelvis. Or since we're on our side, it's tilting forward, tilting backward. And feel into that. And again, this is a slow movement. Don't overdo it. Feel into it. See what's accessible this morning. And if you're with me, you might be doing this slowly enough that the breath is starting to follow the movement. And so there might be an inhale as you lift the lumbar spine away from the floor, and an exhale as you flatten out that lumbar curve. And, you know, either continue on or stop and rest. Just for a few more rounds of breath, if your breath has started to catch up with the movement. Pause for a moment. And then really slowly roll to one side to bring yourself to tabletop. So bring yourself to all fours, so on your hands and knees. And I also want to point out, as you're making your way to hands and knees, that while we were doing that lumbar movement, the shoulders were likely not, they were probably moving a little bit, but they weren't helping. They weren't they weren't creating the movement. And so from hands and knees, finding the other movement of the spine. So if we were tilting the pelvis forward and backward, Now, can you shift the hips left to right? So this might feel like you're making the shape of a C with your spine. So the hips turn or reach for the shoulder, so your right hip reaching for your right shoulder, and then come back to center, and the left hip reaching for the left shoulder. And so this is the lateral movement that the spine is capable of. And so gently feeling into this, this is all starting to, this is mostly the lower part of the thoracic spine and a little bit of the lumbar. So be gentle and notice how your head participates in this movement. And if your head is helping you lift a hip toward the shoulder, can you, just to play with this, if you're lifting your right hip towards your right shoulder, can you turn your head to the left? And then opposite. So left hip towards left shoulder, turn your head to the right. And that's a mind, or not a mind, that's like a brain thing. So don't worry about doing that in this moment. We'll do more of that stuff later, but just notice how the head will turn in the direction that your hip is reaching. And if you want, you can pause. Now, from this shape, you may have enough of this C lateral movement. Move into some cat-cow. So now find the actual cat-cow shape and see how the pelvis leads this action. Okay, ready, gotta go. So in cat-cow, the pelvis starts the movement and the shoulders and the head follow along or get involved now. So do a couple more of those. Several breaths of cat-cow. So the inhale is possibly easier on the cow, and the exhale possibly easier on the cat. Pause at what feels like neutral. So hands are supporting the upper body by being placed directly under the shoulders, and then the knees are directly under the weight of your hips. Curl the toes under of the right foot and extend the right foot back behind you. And so we're only going to do half of this pose here. So use all of your attention and intention to take the right foot off the floor and find the balance here. And this is all we're doing. So stay here, and I'm giving instruction, but you have to have the experience, and I want you to experiment with what's happening to your pelvis here. A lot of muscles start to fire up, especially the longer you hold the leg. Can you keep the hips level? And then bring that right knee back to the floor. Pause. Move to the other side. So curl the toes under of the left foot, extend the left foot back, and get your bearings so that when it's time to lift the leg, the balance has already started. And when you're ready, lift the left leg and find all the ways that your pelvis is stabilizing this shape. Feel the muscles fire. I'm instructing, you're experiencing, and you're experimenting. This is a lot of work. But the muscles doing this work are really large and they're capable. They may not have a chance to do it often, but if we remind our body, there's a lot of capability there. Come back to all fours. And then move into the first side again. So right leg back, extend the leg. So staying right here, again, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of benefit here. If you're still experimenting and playing, you can bend the right knee, and you can try lifting the foot, the knee, the whole leg toward the ceiling, and feel what the spine and the pelvis are doing here to make this action happen. Again, a lot of work. And aren't you glad you're on your hands too? Like I haven't asked you to lift an arm. Come all the way back to both knees and hands when you're ready. And then use your body awareness. You know when it's time to do the other side. Extend, come up onto the toes of the left foot and extend first. So go into left leg extending and lift the left leg and find the balance and find the stability here. Feel into all the muscles of the pelvis and hips, the legs that are making this action happen. And again, there's a lot of benefit right here. No need to do anything else. If you want to, you can bend a knee, the left knee, and play with lifting that leg even higher. And if you're doing this, you might notice that the lumbar curve exaggerates here. And are you letting the lumbar curve exaggerate? Keep breathing. That's the other question. Are you breathing? Come all the way back to hands and knees. Walk the right knee to the right. So now your knees are wide from each other. The right knee further out than the left knee. Take the right arm out to a T. Reach the right arm toward the ceiling. Let the hips really shift into this. Reach for the ceiling. And when you're ready, bring the right arm down behind the left arm and reach the right arm all the way through. You might end up with the right shoulder on the floor. Let the hips be free here. And when I say free, I mean let the hips really reach away from the shoulders in order to make this happen. Come back to all fours. Take your time. Realign the knees, so both knees under the hips. And then take the left knee out to the right. Or, I'm sorry, take the left knee out to the left. Left knee out to the left. Extend the left arm. And when you're ready, spiral the rib cage toward the ceiling. So you're reaching your left arm toward the ceiling. And if it feels like a good idea, take that left arm back down behind the right arm and reach the left arm beyond your mat to the right. You may end up on the floor, the shoulder on the floor, if the hips are allowing that reach to happen. This is called thread the needle. So take your time and come gently back to all fours and do another round of that. So step the right knee out to the right. Take the right arm first horizontal to the floor, and then spiral the rib cage toward the ceiling. And then let the whole arm reach behind the left arm. Shoulder may come to the floor. And stay there, breathe, feel that whole stretch. When you come out of this pose, take the right arm back through that reach so that you reach for the ceiling again, and then come back to hands and knees. Realign your knees, realign your hands, make sure you're stable. Do the same on the other side. So step the left knee to the left, reach the left arm. Let the hips really flow through this. So the hips are really shifting to the left. And then thread the arm behind. Let the shoulder come to the floor. If this floor is near to the shoulder, see if the hips can allow the shoulder to come down to the floor. Feel that reach. And coming out of this, go all the way back through the reach toward the ceiling, and then bring the hands back. Once you are in neutral, come to sitting on your right hip. So you're sit on your, sit on whatever hip you landed on, since I said the wrong thing. The legs are opposite. So I'm sitting on my left hip. Let the legs drape to the right. Depending, if you did right hip, then your legs are draped in the opposite direction. Adjust your legs so that the top leg is not on top of the front leg. So your legs are in that 90-90 shape. Make sure you have a comfortable seat. You're firmly on the hip that you're sitting on, but the opposite hip is lifting away from the floor. Spine is long. Keep the spine long, including the cervical spine, right? So we're in an awkward shape here. And so we might be doing all kinds of things with our spine to become straight up and down. So notice what you're doing. So if you're jutting your ribs out to one side, can you pull them back to midline? And if you're tilting your head to one side, can you bring your head to midline? So it's not, it's very mindful sitting, right? Which is the only time we do this is when we're in yoga. Okay, so from here, the front leg, keep the ankle firmly planted on the floor. Spine is all aligned. Lift the front knee. This might be the back knee. Now I'm not sure what to call it. So I'm lifting my right knee. I'm sitting on my left hip. And I'm lifting my right knee. If you are sitting on your right hip, you're lifting your left knee. Does that help? Okay. So the leg that I'm not sitting on is the knee that I'm lifting. The other way is impossible. Well, uncomfortable. Okay. Do several of those. Pause. Feel that heat. Lean back, bring the feet forward, and shift the legs to the other side. So now I'm on my right hip. I'm going to adjust so that I really feel like I'm on my right hip and I can align my spine. So my ribs aren't poking out. I'm pulling them to center. My head isn't leaning in one side. I'm keeping it at center. Now, when I start looking at the monitor, I might mess all that up, but essentially that's the attention that I'm giving this posture. Now my left knee, the knee that I'm not sitting against, I'm going to lift. And go slow here. Like if you have low back stuff, this might feel super pinchy, so please be gentle here. Like you're feeling into every micrometer as you move, right? So feeling, 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 oh, here I am at the top. Oh, I might be able to go a little higher. What if I stay here? This is your experiment. And lowering down just as slowly. The transitions in and out of a pose are where injury happens. So be particularly mindful of that in out. Lean all the way back, bring the feet forward. Take a hold of the legs, either holding the thighs with each hand, or maybe your arms are ape-like and long enough to grab a hold behind your legs. But keep leaning back until your feet come off the floor a little bit. And just do a little lifting. Roll the ankles around. Find opposite direction. And then come all the way to a seated position, your choice of seat. And I'm gonna prop up my knees today because my hips are a little achy and it feels better if my knees are a little higher. You do you. This is what I need today. So I want to pause here and go back to some of the stuff that often we do at the beginning of class. So wherever your eyes are looking, I want you now to find a place far from the screen. So depending on how close in you are to the screen, I want you to look away. If you can see the horizon line out a window, I want you to look as far to the horizon as you can. Turn your head so that your eyes can be straight forward out of the skull. And then look far away. So the focus is on the furthest point that you can see. Spine is tall. And so without moving the eyes, take in the whole periphery. So we're going back to that broad, we've done this before, so it's the opposite of looking at a computer screen. It's seeing the whole periphery. And if you want to bring your hands out, left and right, and then wiggle the fingers until you can actually see the fingers wiggling in your peripheral vision. And this isn't a test. This is letting the nervous system have an experience. Like, oh, remember there's this thing that we know how to do. It doesn't matter. Like I'm kind of feeling like my fingers are coming pretty close in before I can see them. It doesn't matter. And then take them away. And then take the hands up overhead and do the same thing. So still looking straight ahead, but now I'm trying to find my fingertips in my peripheral vision up and down. And then take them away. And then take the hands on a diagonal and find the fingertips wiggling in the periphery of the diagonal. Doesn't matter if you're with me or doing the same pattern. And then take them away and find the opposite diagonal. So still looking straight ahead and finding the fingertips wiggling. Where the heck are they? On this diagonal. And then come all the way to neutral. Give yourself a nice face massage or scalp massage, face massage. Take off your glasses if that helps you. Trying to stay connected to our cranial nerves, which have a lot of jobs. One of them is to help us express ourselves to others, but also helps us understand our own language, right? So how am I feeling today? What do I need today? Find the creases and the little lumps and bumps across the front of the face. There's a lot of nerve endings, big nerves that are coming through the skull directly from the brain into the tissue of and muscles of the face. So you can be gentle here. There's no need to do a deep tissue massage. Just even like a stroking, take the back of your fingers and stroke. Okay, I have a new one for you. So you know this big muscle, the sternocleidomastoid muscle? If I turn my head, it kind of sticks out on the side. And if I find that muscle sticking out on the side and I follow it all the way up to where it connects to the skull, and I gently pinch up here at the top of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Oh, there it is. Whew. Pinching at the attachment to the skull. And you know, you're probably doing it right. Don't worry. Come back to center, turn your head the other direction and find that big muscle on this side. And find the attachment up here on this muscle up here. Oh, you might be finding some big tension here. I definitely do. You can do both at once if you want. And then because we're in the neck, I like to use my first 3 fingers to press along the neck and into the trapezius muscle, which is across the top of the shoulders. Part of the trapezius is across the upper shoulders. I mean, just this every day. It's kind of amazing. Okay. Take your time, make your way to the wall. Come to the wall. I'm gonna come to my wall. Let's see, I'm gonna be right here. So when you were on the floor, on your back with your knees bent, can you go back to that feeling where the back of the head is touching the wall, parts of the shoulders are touching the wall, and the hips are touching the wall? And so now you're feeling the curve, like how your neck curves away from the wall, and how the lumbar spine curves away from the wall. Can you experience that pelvic tilt from this horizontal position or vertical position opposed to the on your mat horizontal position? So can you try to flatten the low back into the wall? Keep your head against the wall, keep your shoulders against the wall, keep the spine connected exactly how it was earlier. And you can figure out your feet position so that the spine, the whole spine, is connected to the wall. Try to flatten the lumbar curve and then try to move it away. Flatten the lumbar curve and move it away. So You might notice in order to flatten the lumbar curve, bending the knees helps you do it. And then move it away. Flatten the lumbar curve and move it away. Move it away meaning move the curve away from the wall. So it curves away from the wall. Okay. From here, adjust your feet. Keep your back against the wall. So my head, my shoulders, and my hips are against the wall. I'm going to take my left foot, and I have to lean a little bit. I'm going to take my left foot up off the floor. So you can make this your own. If you want to bring the left knee as high as the hip, yay for you. You can also bring the foot to the wall and use it as support. Walk your foot up the wall any amount. I want you to feel what happens when you raise the leg. What does your pelvis do when you raise your leg? So when the wall is here to support it, there's nothing, the pelvis doesn't have to do anything, right? Go to the other side. Use your body wisdom now, like your body knows that you have to adjust the weight, keep your head, your shoulders, your hips against the wall, and bring the right foot or the other foot off the floor. And you can brace yourself, your foot against the wall to make this happen. Or you can lift, but either way, you're assessing what the low back does when you bring this leg up and down. Go back to the other side, take the right hand to the left knee and lift, and go back to the other side. So now you can move quickly. Keep your back against the wall and do, now I'm coming away from the wall in order to shift. So that's fair. I just want you to feel this left, right, cross body. This is just sort of an aside. Leaning against the wall and lifting. Okay, pause there. Now, look down at your feet, hip distance apart. And play with this. Try doing this with your heels all the way against the wall. Bend your knees a little bit and try to fold forward. Bend your knees a little bit and try to fold forward. At some point, you feel like you're going to fall over. And the reason is because your hips cannot go back further. If you round your spine, you can probably maybe get closer to the floor. Okay, now come all the way to upright. Take your feet. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm going to take my heels about 3 inches away from the wall, but I'm still touching the wall with my hips and my upper back. And now from here, keeping my hips touching the wall, bend my knees slightly, bend your knees slightly, and start to fold forward. And if you start to feel like you need more space, like you're gonna fall over if you can't get to the floor, fold over as far as you can go. Let your arms rest on your thighs. Now I think I need more space, so I'm gonna come to upright and walk my feet another couple of inches away from the wall. Still, my hips are against the wall. Bend knees slightly and start to fold over. Rest my hands on my thighs. Come all the way to upright, leaning against the wall. So now the difference between trying to bend over with your hips against the wall and your heels totally against the wall is the ability of the pelvis to move. So hips against the wall, heels against the wall, trying to fold over. I have to use my spine, and that's frankly terrible. Feels awful in my body. Feels like I'm gonna fall over and lose my balance. When I take my feet forward about, I determined it was about 6 inches. I could then keep my hips against the wall and fold at the top of my thigh bones. It means my pelvis is actually moving. So the more my pelvis is free to move, the closer I can get to the floor. So play with that. That's the experiment. Give your hips total freedom. So when we fold over from the spine, we're rounding, we're flattening out, we're rounding. It sounds like two different things, but really we're changing the curve of the lumbar spine. We're rounding it in its opposite direction. When we allow the hips to tilt forward, the pelvis to tilt forward, then the spine never has to come out of its lumbar curve, of its natural curve. So what that looks like from the side, I'm going to try to show you. So this is me trying to bend from my spine, trying to get to the floor without using my pelvis, trying to get to the floor without using my pelvis. Without using my pelvis. This is me, no pelvis. All right, this is me with my pelvis. My spine doesn't have to curve. I can get really pretty far to the floor. I can almost touch the floor because my hips are allowed to move back behind me. It means my pelvis is allowed to tilt. Okay, remember this? Remember the advice to bend your knees when you're lifting something heavy, to bend your knees. Now the reason that works is because when you bend your knees, your pelvis almost automatically tilts. It's possible to bend your knees and not tilt your pelvis, but I imagine that there was some point in human history where someone said, we can't talk about the butt. We can't talk about the butt reaching back behind us, but we can say things like bend your knees and then the butt automatically goes back. But I'm going to say, let your butt go back behind you when you pick something up. Your knees will probably bend. Okay, so I'm letting my butt go back behind me and my spine never has to do any work. Now I can pick up a boulder and bring it back up. Okay, does that make sense? I'm hoping that makes sense. Anybody have any questions? Okay, you're all working really hard, I can tell. Okay, come to this far end of your mat. Feet are hip distance apart. Arms up overhead. Reach the arms up overhead and arch to the right. Come through center. Arch to the left. So we're doing lateral movement with the spine. Hips are stable. Feet are stable. Just feel into this. And then take yours, on me it's my right foot, depends on the foot that's facing the longest part of your mat. Just take a step in that direction. For me it's the right. And then reach the arms into this star shape. Let the toes adjust so that they are in alignment with the knees, and then bend into the knees and bend into the elbows. Now you're in goddess pose. Knees and toes in the same direction. From here, turn toward the long end of your mat. So for me, I'm going to turn toward the right side of my mat. Turning my toes and eventually bringing my hands down to the mat, and my back knee comes down to the mat. From here, I can flatten out my back foot, bring my torso to upright. There's a little balance happening here. Spiral. Any amount of movement in the upper body. Reaching arms up overhead. Then taking hands back down to the thigh. And then hands to the floor. If you had blocks, it would be an asset here. You can also use the wall or a sofa, like whatever is nearby to help you here, because now we're going to curl the back toes under and step forward. Stay in this low squat position. Let your forearms rest on your thighs. Let your hips reach back behind you because your pelvis is tilting. Take arms out to a T and bring yourself all the way up to standing. Find that crescent shape so you're arching laterally to the right, to the left. Pause at center. If you have your video on, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay, good. We'll do the other side. I'm going to turn away from you so that you can see the movement from behind. I'm starting at the same side of my mat. Feet are about hip distance together. Reach arms up overhead, arch laterally to one direction and the other direction, feeling that lateral movement of the spine. And then take your foot step. I'm stepping to my left and then adjusting my toes so that knees and toes are in cooperation with each other. Star shape. And then goddess shape means bending elbows, bending knees. Now I'm going to shift my feet and my torso toward my left leg. Eventually, hands come to the mat. The back knee comes to the mat. Uncurl the back toes. Come to upright. Now I'm in a lunge. Bring arms up overhead, out to the sides, just finding a way to engage my torso as I'm in this lunge. Eventually, hands back to the floor. Again, use the sofa, use a chair, blocks. Curl the back toes under and press to step forward, staying in the lowest squat you can manage. Forearms resting on thighs. Arms out to a T and come all the way up. Find that lateral movement again. And then come to the center of your mat. Any questions? Yeah, hands up, thumbs up, good. We could do that over and over again, but we're running out of time. So come all the way down to your mat, onto your belly. When you're on your belly, let your forehead rest on your forearms. Let your elbows be wide. Let your legs extend way out behind you. And eventually moving into locust pose where you lift the legs, lift the arms, head lifts because the arms are lifting. So it's that locust pose, lifting, holding. Do you need a demo? You want to see a demo? So locust pose can also be arms straight. Locust pose can also be aerodynamic. Do your version. And then when you're ready, Pause for a moment on your belly. Feel yourself breathe just for a moment. Feel the breath's probably moving at a bit of a pace. A little bit of work happening. And when you feel like the breath is starting to settle, roll onto your back. Have a little happy baby moment before a Savasana. And so happy baby is so comforting, reassuring, playful, all the things at the end of a practice. And so as you move through this happy baby, there's so many ways you can play with it. Take the last moments of your happy baby and make it as symmetrical as possible so that the spine says, oh yes, I have left and right of my body. So that the brain, the nervous system gets to say that everything is where it should be. I'm back to neutral, stress-free, aligned, safe. And then really slowly make your way into a Savasana shape, which can be your choice. Legs draped over a chair, knees bent, legs long. You can be on your side, on your back. So as you settle into your Shavasana shape, come back to feeling into your body, checking on the body in ways that help you to understand, maybe on an intellectual level, what parts of you worked. You know, this muscle, that muscle, these bones, this alignment, that alignment. So mental understanding. And then set aside possibly that mental analysis, that ongoing dialogue about what happened. And instead, possibly instead, drop into sensation. So that the body isn't being assessed so much by the mind, but rather the body is just expressing itself in the form of feeling, sensation. And we could add words to that, like warmth and tingling and buzzing, but also no need for words. So just bathing in sensation. Nothing to do but this. Just resting. Staying with sensation. Noticing all sensation, all the ways the body is feeling itself. Movement of breath. Vibration of sound. Feeling into the light surrounding you. And very gently allowing your whole body to begin in subtle ways, maybe wiggling fingers and toes, and maybe a little bit of opening and closing of the eyelids. So very gently re-engaging with your environment. Coming back to the day, Friday afternoon. Eventually coming to a seated shape. So thank you for practicing today.